we've been dealing with over the last few weeks the message entitled Next Level Giving. Next Level Giving, and over the last couple of weeks we dealt with the subject of tithing, and I know for some, tithing is like a bad word because it's those that believe that when they hear that word tithes or tithing, it's the church trying to get money from you or trying to make the pastor rich. But when in fact, when you look at tithing in the Bible, God orchestrated and created tithing to get blessings to you. We learned that there are benefits that come from tithing. Those are God will open the windows of heaven. That's one of the benefits that comes from tithing. Another benefit that comes from tithing, when you tithe, when you choose to tithe, God said he will pour out for you a such blessing. I don't know about anybody else, but I don't just want a blessing. I want a such blessing, not only one. He also said that there will not be room enough to receive what he has for you, and that he will rebuke the devourer for your sake, for my sake, for our sake. When you tithe, we learn that God said, nor will the devourer take from you or destroy the fruit of your ground. So when you get a harvest, God says, I'll protect your harvest. I'll do what your security system can't do. I'll do what the marketplace and the stock market can't do. God says when you tithe, God says that not only will I protect your harvest, but God says I'll make sure that your vine does not fail to bear fruit. What does that mean? It means that God is our source, not our jobs. God is our source, not the government. Government just proved that it is not your source. God is your source, and when you trust and rely on God, God will take care of you. How many know that God has taken care of you when money couldn't? That God has done things for you that money could not do for you. Money can't heal you, but God can. And so that's why we put our trust in God and not in our money. It is a resource, but it is not the source. Say that with me. Money is a resource. It's not the source. And so we're gonna participate today. This is gonna be an interactive sermon, so I hope y'all ready and prepared, because God says that I'm trying to get you to a place where you prosper, but you've got to be willing to do some things in order for that prosperity to come into your life. Now, today we're gonna be focusing on sowing your seed. Somebody say, sow your seed. Now repeat after me. My seed is working for me. Let's say that again. My seed is working for me. Now, before we dig deep into Genesis 8:22 and there's other scriptures we're going to do, I'm going to ask you to do something for me. If you would, free your hands. If you would, free your hands. Now, for those that are physically able, I'm going to ask you to stand up. We're going to perform a little experiment today. Hope y'all don't mind. Now, for you that are physically able to do this, we're going to ask you to participate in just a quick little experiment. Now, make sure your hands are free. Make sure that you don't have anything in your hands. We're just going to perform just a simple experiment. What we're going to do on the count of 3, I want everybody to take a jump, just a quick jump up in the air. Okay? On the count of 3, when you hear 3, we're just going to jump up in the air, and we're going to see what happens. Y'all okay? If you're physically able to do this, if you're not able to do this physically, if you have a handkerchief or a towel in your lap, maybe just toss that thing up in the air, and we want to see what happens. Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Now, I found something very interesting, that everybody that jumped up came down. But that was just the first try. Even if you're watching by way of Facebook Live, if you want to join in on this, because we got people watching across the country, put your tablet down, put your laptop down. We're going to try this again. Now, this is the second time. We're just going to try to see if this truly, in fact, works. Again, this time we're going to jump up on the count of 3, and we're going to see what happens. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Funny that as I look across this room, there are people of different ages. Yet everybody that jumped up, regardless of their age, came down. I'm looking across this room, and I know that people have different backgrounds, but everybody that jumped up came down. I'm looking across this room, and not to disparage anybody, but there are people of varying weights. But everybody that jumped up came down. But here's the third time. We're going to do it one more time. One more time. You're going to perform this experiment one more time. But here's what I want to project and ask. If you don't want to come down, by all means, stay up. Okay. We're going to give you permission that if you don't want to participate by coming down, when we jump again, just stay up in the air on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. It's interesting that everybody, regardless, when they jumped up, still came down. You may be seated. Give yourselves a hand for participating. This little experiment that you participated in is the law of gravity. What the law of gravity says is whatever goes up will come down. The law of gravity says that no matter what you are, if you go up, you will come down. What's interesting about the law of gravity is when God created this earth, he put forces in control. He put forces at work that no matter where you come from, you are bound by that law. No matter what your educational background is, you are still bound by that law. No matter how much money or lack thereof you have, you are bound by the law of gravity. Whether you wanted to participate in it or not, you are still bound by that law. I found something interesting else about that law of gravity, and I looked this up, Deacon Bradshaw. God does not in his word tell us about the law of gravity. When you get a chance, try and find it. You won't. God doesn't bother to tell us in his word about the law of gravity, yet we are still held accountable to it. Are we going somewhere? He does not tell us in his word that if you jump up, you will come down, yet we are still bound by that law. And whether you agree with the law or not, you still got to abide by it. Whether you want to do it or not, God says, I put forces at work in the world that whether you agree with it or not, is still going to hold you accountable to it. He did not bother to tell us about gravity, but yet we're still held to it. But look at what God does in Genesis 8:22. Because there's another law that's at work that he does tell us about. And it's this. Watch what it says. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest. Somebody say seed time and harvest. Cold and heat. Somebody say cold and heat. Winter and summer. Somebody say winter and summer. And day and night. Somebody say day and night. Watch this. Shall not cease. So here we see God is telling us that as long as this earth exists, these laws will be in effect. As long as this earth is in its existence, you will have seed time and you will have harvest. You will have cold and you will have heat. All you got to do is live in Atlanta long enough, you'll experience cold and heat. You will have winter and you'll have summer. And in Atlanta, sometimes you have it in the same week, right? And day and night. So regardless of whether or not you want to participate, God says the earth is going to do what I've told it to do, and this is what the earth's going to do, seed time and harvest. It's going to do cold and heat. It's going to do winter and summer. It's going to do day and night. But what I love about God is he thought enough of us that if he put a law into place, we have an opportunity to participate in that law. And we're going to deal with that today. See, some of us, we don't want to participate in the seed time and harvest law, but you have no choice but to participate in the gravity law. But we're going to see how God wants to help you and how God wants to bless you. God says, when I created the earth was created in such a way that it must come into agreement with whatever you deposit into it. If you do your part, if I do my part, if we do our part and sow seed, God says the earth has to return back to you what you sowed. Somebody say you're going to reap what you sow. Say it again. I'm going to reap what I sow. Let's say that one more time. I'm going to reap what I sow. But the question is, what are you sowing? Because if you're not sowing anything, you can't reap anything. Why expect a harvest if you're not sowing anything? And so we're going to see this. Let's go again. Let's go to let's look at something. Go to 2 Corinthians 9. So we see now in Genesis 8:22 that a law has been put into place. That's the law of seed time and harvest. And God says, as long as this earth is here, you'll see that. Let's go to 2 Corinthians 9. Let's look at verse number 10. Because now that we know that the law is in place, let's see what else God has to say. 2 Corinthians 9, let's look at verse 10. It says, now may he is God, who supplies seed to the sower. Now I find this interesting that God says he supplies seed. But we're going to deal with the fact that who he supplies seed to and who he doesn't supply seed to. The three types of givers, three types of people that give. Here's the first type. The first type is the thinker. What is the thinker? The thinker is the one that overthinks everything. That overanalyzes whether or not they should or shouldn't give. The thinker is the one that God doesn't supply seed to. Why? Because the thinker is spending too much time trying to figure out what the seed going to do. When a farmer puts a seed in the ground, doesn't sit over the hole and put the seed in. But a thinker overanalyzes. The thinker's got to know what the DNA of the seed is. The thinker's trying to figure out, is this the best time to sow? The thinker's is trying to figure out what kind of season am I in right now? Should I be sowing it in the first place? The thinker spends too much time for it to make sense, and they never sow because it never makes sense to them. Now, understand this, your seed can't work for you if it's still in your hand. Let me say that again. Your seed cannot work for you if it's still in your hand. All a seed is in your hand is potential. But you'll never realize that potential if it's still sitting in your hand. In order for that seed to produce, you've got to release it and put it and sow it into the ground. And so many of us, we hold on to our seed and we want God to bring a harvest, but God says, you're not giving me anything to work with. And your seed in your hand is just potential, but God says, I can do more when you release that potential and when you sow it into good ground. And God says, this is good ground right here, but you've got to be willing to sow in it so that God can do more with what you've given. Here's the second type of person when it comes to giving, that's the worrier. You got the thinker who overanalyzes, and you have the worrier. Notice 2 Corinthians 9 and 10 doesn't say that he gives seed or supplies seed to a worrier. What's a worrier? A worrier is a person that once they give, they start worrying. As soon as they give it, man, I don't know why I did that. The worrier is like, what they doing with the money? But you never wonder what they doing with the money at Walmart. You never wonder what they doing with the money at Macy's. I ain't trying to talk about no, but you never worry about what they're doing with the money and all these places that we put. Your money is seed. Guess what they do with your money? They take your money and they invest it in other ways to expand their kingdoms. But yet we worry about where the money is going and what the money is being used for in God's house. Because a worrier worries as soon as they give, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what got into me when I gave. What got into you when you went and bought that flat screen TV? See, the worrier is always concerned about what's going on with their seed. Let's go to Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is going to help us. Ecclesiastes. It's Old Testament. If you can find Proverbs, you can find Ecclesiastes. All right, just the next book over. Ecclesiastes 11. But you know, you got your concordance, and you got your. It can help you out. It can help you find these things. Don't be ashamed. Ecclesiastes 11. Let's look at verse 4. Look at this. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. That's what a worrier is. They're always looking for conditions to be perfect in order to sow. Can I help you? Can I help somebody? Conditions will never be perfect for you to sow. A farmer that's looking for perfect conditions will never sow crop. But he has to trust in the system. Look, you can't wonder if the sun gonna shine on what I sowed. Where the rain at? You'll never sow worry. But look at verse 5. Look at verse 5. It's going to help somebody. Watch this. Verse 5 says, as you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who is with child, so you do not know the works of God who makes everything. Notice that. You don't know how it works, but you just got to trust that God is the one that knows how it works. And he's the one that makes everything. And so when you put your trust in God, God will make sure that you reap a harvest from what you sow. Look at verse 6. Look at verse 6. It says here, in the morning, sow your seed. Don't even think about it, just sow it. In the morning, sow your seed, and in the evening, do not withhold your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both alike will be good. God says when you trust the system will work for you. And God said, I created this earth so that this earth will benefit you. God says when you sow, God says you have to trust the process, and by trusting the process, you'll reap the benefits. I remember when we had our home in Stone Mountain, and in the backyard, we couldn't grow grass for nothing. And we tried everything. We tried that stuff where you sprinkle it, and then you water it and, wait on it. And then a little patch will grow here and a little patch will grow there. But we couldn't get the grass to grow in across the entire backyard. So one year, I bought several bags of seed. And I had a spreader at the time, but I said, I'm not going to do the spreader this time. I'm just going to dig my hand in it. I'm just going to throw seed everywhere. My wife was looking at me from the window like, what is wrong with this nut? I was just throwing seed everywhere. I didn't care where it landed. I did too much. But I did it for a reason. Because here's what I know about seed. Once you throw it down, if it doesn't take root, birds will fly in and get it. If you don't cover it, other animals and bugs will eat it. But I got to a place where I said, I'm going to put so much seed out here that it's got to produce the result I'm looking for. And God said, I need my people to have that kind of mentality when it comes to sowing seed, that you just got to sow and keep sowing. You got to have a lifestyle of sowing seeds. So God says, you don't know which one's going to be good. You don't know which one's going to bring up. You just got to trust in the system. And by trusting in the system and the process, God says, then your harvest will come. So let's go back to 2 Corinthians 9, verse 10. Go watch this. Because now we're going to see the third person. Because you got the thinker, because they overanalyze everything. You got the worrier. But notice 2 Corinthians 9:10 says, now may he who supplies seed to the sower. Notice who God gives seed to. People he knows are going to sow the seed. Notice who God gives seed to. People he knows is not going to hold it in their hand, but they're going to release it so that it can reach its fullest potential. Who does God give seed to? He gives seed to people that trust in the process, and they believe that if the earth remains, there's going to be a season of seed time, and there's going to be a season of harvest. Somebody say seed time and harvest. The sower represents and understands, I will reap what I sow. Somebody say it, I will reap what I sow. Say it again, I will reap what I sow. The sower understands this because the sower recognizes that God created this world, that the world can't reject what you put in it. Let's see that. Let's go to Genesis chapter 1. Y'all don't mind being educated a little bit, do y'all? Genesis chapter 1. I'm going to show you something, and then I want you to, there's a little side piece of information I'm going to share with you. Genesis chapter 1. Let's look at verse 11. Genesis 1, verse 11. Watch this. Then God said, who's talking? God, right? So this ain't the pastor. This ain't the deacons, this ain't no apostle or bishop. Then God said, listen to what he said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth. And the word of God says, and it was so. Let's stay there for a minute. When God speaks a thing, it's got to happen. Let me say that again. When God speaks a thing, it's got to happen. So God says, let the earth bring forth grass. So what did the earth do? It brought forth grass. He said, let the herbs yield seed. What did the herbs do? They yielded seed. Then he said, let the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind. So what did it do? Trees began to produce fruit of its kind. And then watch what it says, whose seed is in itself. Little caveat right here, little caveat. Because some of us, we're trying. Some of us, I'm trying. I'm trying to eat healthier. I'm trying, y'all. I slip up every now and then, but I'm trying. I'm trying to eat more fruit. And I'm trying to eat more vegetables. Because what God created is best for you. What man is filtering with and messing around with ain't good for you. But what God creates is always good for you. And so look at what he says here. The fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in, let's stay, whose seed is in itself. That's why you got to be careful about eating fruit that's supposed to have seed that don't have it. Because God created food. And if it's supposed to have a seed, you better be eating that fruit that has seed in it. Seedless oranges, I wouldn't mess with because God didn't create it that way. See, man gets to tinkering with stuff and making adjustments with stuff, but God says that fruit, when it produces fruit of its kind, has seed in it of itself. God in his infinite wisdom said when he created fruit, when he created vegetables, that those fruit and vegetables have seed in the center of them so that when it's time to sow more seed, you have it. I had to ask God a question. God, why did you put the seed in the center? Why not put the seed on the outer shell of the fruit? Why not put the seed on the outer shell of the vegetables? Why put the seed in the center of the fruit? If you ever eat an apple, where's the apple seed? In the center. If you ever eat oranges, where's the seed at? In the center. If you ever eat watermelon, where's the seed at? In the center. No matter what the fruit is, eat a peach, the seed is in the center. Pomegranate, seed. Why put it in the center, God? God says, because I want people to enjoy the fruit first. And then when they're done enjoying the fruit, what remains is more seed for them to sow. Let's go back to 2 Corinthians 9, verse 10. Because God's trying to bless somebody. He says, now may he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food, pay close attention to this, supply and multiply the seed you have sown and increase the fruits of your righteousness. What happens when you sow a lemon seed? You get a lemon tree. Lemons grow on that tree. You enjoy the fruit of the lemon and then are left with more lemon seed. When you sow an apple seed, you get an apple tree. Apples become the harvest on that tree, and when you enjoy the fruit of the apple, what's left are apple seed. Go ahead and plant you an orange seed. You'll get an orange tree. And then the fruit of the harvest are oranges on that tree. And when you get done enjoying the fruit of that orange, you get seed to sow into the ground. See, God created that. He said, not only will I supply you with the seed, but I'll supply and multiply the seed, but you got to sow it. I've never known the earth to reject or repel the seed sown into it. If you sow an apple seed, the earth ain't going to say, nah, I'm going to make this an orange tree. No, it has to accept and agree with the seed you sown. I've never known the earth to say, if you sow a lemon seed, no, I'm going to make this a peach tree. No, if you sow a lemon seed, the earth has to agree with that seed and reproduce what you've sown into it. And God has orchestrated this earth that even if you sow a money seed, you'll get a return in money. How do I know this? How do I know this? If you ever talk to an inventor, if you ever talk to somebody with a business idea, they go looking for seed investors. What are seed investors? They are people that have money that will give money by way of a seed investment to that inventor, to that product, to that service, with the expectation of getting an ROI, a return on their investment. Because you've got to give in order to receive. You got to sow in order to reap. The business world participates in seed time and harvest. Investors participate in the seed time and harvest law. It's church folk that have a problem with it. Everybody else in the world doesn't have a problem sowing seed. But as God's people who's supposed to benefit more than anybody else, we're the ones that struggle. But look at what it says here. 2 Corinthians 9:10. Now may he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food supply and multiply the seed you have sown. And God wanted me to share with somebody today that just like that law of gravity, if you go up, you're going to come down. God said that you don't get to negotiate that law. If you jump up, I put in place forces to make you come down. I said, I don't care if you disagree with it or not. If you jump up, you will come down. God said, I didn't even bother to tell you about that law. But if we pull back up Genesis 8:22, God said, what I did bother to tell you about was as long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, day and night. But look at what he says at the end. Shall not cease. And God says you can participate in this law for your good. But you can't hold on to the seed. You got to sow it. And when you sow it, you can expect a harvest. When you sow it, God says then you release the full potential of that seed so they can go and work for you. When you sow it, and don't overthink it and don't worry about it, just trust the process. Trust what I put into place. Trust that you will see a harvest from what you sow. You know, we trust a whole lot of stuff from man, but we won't trust what God has put in place. Every time we get in our cars, we trust that when we hit that brake, that car gonna stop. You trust in man right now. You're sitting in a chair with the faith that that chair is going to hold you up regardless of how much you weigh or don't weigh. So why can't we trust what God has done for us? Trust seed time and harvest. Challenge yourself to sow this year like you've never sowed before. Yeah, you got all kinds of challenges out there. I'm closing. All kinds of challenges out there nowadays. One time had the ice bucket challenge. And then you got some crazy folk doing some bird box challenge. Well, why? I don't know. Driving cars blindfolded. This goofiness. How about a seed sowing challenge? How about challenge yourself to give at a level you've never given before? Because it's for your good. Because you will reap what you sow. If you go back and read 2 Corinthians 9, 7, 8, 9, and 10, if you sow sparingly, you'll reap sparingly. If you sow bountifully, you'll reap bountifully. But notice, every time you sow, there's a reaping. It just depends on what you sow, which will determine what you reap. So let's all take our giving to the next level this year. Every year I want to look back and see that the year before I gave more than the year prior to that. And here's what I know about God. You can't outgive God. You can't outgive God. God will make a way where money can't. But trust him in this process. Next level giving. Let's give God some praise. Come on, let's give God some glory in this place. Hallelujah.